Hey, nobody's out there, right? Good. Anyway, I feel compelled to say some weird stuff. Uh, I'm really tired. I'm not going to be able to make this make sense. Probably no one's listening anyway. But also, nobody wants to hear unsolicited advice from some 45-year-old loser guy. But man, what do I want to say? Well, like, okay, so I understand nobody likes unsolicited advice. So let's say I'm not giving unsolicited advice, but I would just say that, like, if I could talk to a 20-something version of me, like if I could go back to talk to me in my 20s, I would say to that guy, just do whatever your angle is to potentially get laid. Make it take it into overdrive. Like, take cocaine. Like, I'm trying to think about how I would say to a 20 something year old version of myself. I would say, like, do that brave thing that you're like, oh, I don't know, I better, like, be responsible and I better do that job thing. That was really stupid. Like, I don't know. I always think, like, if I would have known in my 20s that there would be so much time to spend at a desk, there's going to be, like, so much, like, time to, like, spend at a desk and just do some work. Like, it just seems like there's plenty of, like, humdrum jobs, and that's, like, all that's going to really be, like, available after a certain age. And then, like, you can't really get laid with, like, attractive people who can have kids forever. And it just seems I don't know, like, I don't know quite how to explain this, but what am I trying to say? I don't know. Like, I've never had, like, I've never had parents, and I've never had kids and stuff like that, and so I'm not really sure what I'm missing out on. But sometimes it just seems like they're sort of, like, locked down. It just seems like the most of the people I know who have, like, marriage and kids, at least in the case of my parents and some of my friends' parents, they were just kind of forced into it from, like, lack of options. But it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like the best stuff is basically, like, when you're in your 20s and stuff. And so 20s or early 30s. maybe it's just me. I don't have a big enough sample size. But what am I trying to say? Like, this is what I keep thinking the older I get. When I see somebody who has, like, a career and they're kind of locked in, they have, like, a career, and they're like a 7th level manager in the company, and they have these people, and they have mortgage, and they have, like, a Tesla. I kind of wonder, like, did they win or did they lose? Because it just seems like they're kind of, like, strapped down. They're strapped down, they're strapped in, and they just are, like, their time is booked, and it just seems like it's sort of being, like, converted into money. And so I just think that doesn't seem better. I don't know. I'm not trying to corrupt the youth. Probably no one's watching this, but there's so many, like, people in Marin County, where I'm from, who just got rich, and they just got strapped down. Their time just got sort of converted into money. And meanwhile, like people just get old and die. That's what I think, like, people don't get, is, like, you don't, like, get, I don't know, I guess, like, there's this weird, this is what I'm trying to say. I guess this is what I'm trying to say. Is that, like, I think what happens to a lot of people is they have, like, a taste of, like, poverty. I've never had, like, a taste of poverty, but I would imagine, like, if my dad didn't shelter me, I would have had, like, some taste of, like, just, like, oh God, like, I don't have enough money, and how am I going to pay for food and stuff? And then I think people just get so scared that they just work so that they're like, oh my God, I hope that never happens again. But then their time is just spent doing all these, like, forms and traffic and stuff. And then they just buy some stuff, and it's like, oh, like that's it? Like, what did you want to, like, do? So at some point, I don't know. I don't want to do some, like, heart-to-heart, like, unsolicited advice stuff. But just basically, my inability to get laid at this age is really, like, it just makes me sort of kick myself for every opportunity I didn't just fuck my brains out when I was in my 20s or 30s. There were, believe it or not, when I was in my 20s and 30s, there were a bunch of women, a handful of women, who, like, sort of said, like, yoo-hoo, like, maybe I'll have sex with you. And I was like, oh, like, I have to work on my painting. I have to work on my art stuff. And now I'm just like, oh God, I should have just done nothing else than, like, just tried to get laid and just had fun, like, just any kind of fun. I think sometimes, like, I think the people who just kind of live, they kind of have like the right idea. I think that like the people who sort of bury themselves in the work, I guess it's responsible. I guess it's good for society and stuff like that. But sometimes I just think they just didn't live. They didn't live enough, and they used it as an excuse. And they're like, I gotta do my career, but really like it's just I don't know. What am I saying? Like I don't want to say this because sometimes I think that like if there's probably parents who shelter their kids and they're like, no, don't listen to fools like this. Like you should tend to your studies and you should work hard and you should get a good job and then you'll be a parent and then you can have kids and it's good to have like a house and kids and stuff. I guess so. Yeah, I'll never know. I'll probably never have like kids or anything like that, but like just 20s and 30s is pretty great. You can just there's just so many things that you can do then that you can't really do, or I'll say I statements that I can't seem to really do. And so I'm just like, man, I should have just fucked my brains out. I probably should have taken like cocaine or something like that, whatever it took to make it to the brave, like just go for it level that I didn't really kick it into that like overdrive level. I just was like, like no, I should be responsible and stuff. I think maybe not. Maybe responsibility is like, I don't know. This is a very toxic thing to say. Jordan Peterson would say, don't listen to this guy. He's a fucking jackass. He's a fool. You gotta work hard. You're gonna end up working in the salt mines. Also, like, I'm not trying to ruin anybody's life or anything. Like, no one's watching this. But, like, it seems like artificial intelligence is really going to change the world in, like, 5 years. And a lot of these jobs, like, they I don't know, they might even have, like, universal basic income or something in the future. And so there's just going to be this thing where it's like, dude, what the hell did I do all that work for? And so, anyway, what's your point? I'll just say I statements. I wish I didn't work so hard at all this, like, art stuff. I wish I just sort of had fun. But I think you have to have, like, ability to have fun. And I guess if you can't, like, make eye contact and talk with people, your ability to have fun is, like, pretty limited. And so I probably should have just taken cocaine. I probably should have just been a cocaine addict. Anyway. But anyway, long story short, if anybody's watching this, tomorrow's a Saturday night. If you're in your 20s, I'll just say, if I was talking to a 20-year-old guy in my 20s, I would just say, like, just try to get laid, like, as much as possible. Like, if there was a 20-something version of myself that I could talk to, like, don't do that, like, that desk stuff. There's gonna be so much desk stuff. There's desk stuff galore from, like, 40 onward. There's nothing else that you can, like, really, it's hard to find other stuff. But then just finding people that are attractive, that you want to have sex with them and they want to have sex with you, that's the best stuff. And you could do it if you just, like, apply more. Just do it, like, all day long and maybe mix in some, like, drugs and alcohol. And I don't have regrets because I think there's probably no free will. But if I did believe in free will, I would regret, like, every instance that I didn't just try to date that woman or be brave and talk to that woman. Just find a way to just impress her, or, you know, make her think that you're cool or something like that. Or just try. You got nothing to lose. What's the point? Anyway, no one listens to me. I should speak for myself. Dude, I've been for, like, when I was in my early 30s, I got laid a bunch. But now it's just always overweight ethnic chicks, ladies from Asia, and tattooed single moms. And I'll send them messages. I'll say, like, let's go out like rabbits. And they're like, ugh, you have to let me own you. And I'm like, I'm never going to do that. And so I guess that's kind of the way life works, though. I guess that's I've never gotten old before. And so my general feeling at, like, 44 is like, oh, like, that's kind of how things go. Is like people, they have flings and stuff in their 20s. And then by 40, it's like, hey, you're supposed to get married or something like that. It's like, can't get dominated. You can never get dominated. Also, there's another phenomenon I want to talk about. This is something I've also noticed in my 40s, and I'm not trying to. What's the point? Let's just say I could be wrong. This might be like a loser attitude, but I noticed this phenomenon as I've gotten older. Is that like I think older people take advantage of younger people sometimes, like in the sense that like when I'll go to Marin County, I'll see sometimes like this typical scene where like there'll be these like old people who are like 50, 60, 70. They'll be gallivanting around in some like hatchback car, and they'll have like multiple properties that they're just renting out to like younger people sometimes. And then they'll go to like the little town store, and at the town store there'll be this kid who's like, you know, early 20s or whatever, and he's just bagging groceries or something. And I feel like there's a trap where like the older people, like particularly like people in their 50s and 60s, they need the young people to do the grunt work. But really, if those older people were suddenly young, they'd be like, I'm not doing that. They would try to become owners as soon as possible. That seems to be really obvious to me the older I get, is that there's this kind of like thing where it's like the world needs like young people to go to war because they don't know any better. But by the time they get to 40 or 50, they're like, I'm not doing the grunt work. Like I'm gonna own something and get somebody stuck in my little like rat trap. And so what's the point? I think that sometimes if I was talking to like a 20 something version of myself, I would say be really aware of being used. I didn't understand like how, like nobody, I know no one takes unsolicited advice. Let's just say no one's listening to this, but man, I really suffered in my 20s by number one, not realizing that those 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds who you think are gonna like get you there. Like I used to listen to these guys in teaching in classes when I was in college, and I thought like, oh, these guys are gonna take me to my career or something. I didn't realize that they didn't give like a shit about me. They were just kind of like pontificating, and they weren't really interested in me getting my career. Like I only really got good stuff when I sort of like took my thing into my own hands and said, dude, I gotta like learn my own stuff. But I think a lot of people, they're stuck in front of some sort of unnecessary middleman, and they think that they just have this room where there's this guy who's like, I'll get you there, and meanwhile that guy's never gonna really, he's kind of like in the way. Like really, like they'd be better off just like if going on the internet, and they could find like better deals. And I think that happens a lot. I think a lot of people get taken advantage of for their ignorance. And so what's my point? Basically, I think anybody, but particularly younger people, they should be careful about being used and abused by older people who know stuff that they don't know. Not me particularly, but like there's a lot of situations where somebody will just be like, oh, I got you, I'll get you there. Sometimes they're a teacher, a landlord, a boss, and it's like they just have you in like their little system. And meanwhile, there's better deals. That's the main thing. There's better deals. There's better people who can help you more than that. Teacher, landlord, boss. They'll never tell you that like there's just way better deals. And I think a lot of people just keep going to some guy, and then the guy was like, yeah, there's way better deals. We were never going to tell you that. We were happy to just keep taking advantage of your ignorance. And so I would be really how could you get around that? Just like ask other people, ask other sources, try to find other sources for that teaching, that career thing, that skill-based thing, I just think the world has like a lot of unnecessary middlemen, and they take advantage of people who don't know any better. And sometimes those are people who are just younger because they just haven't been around the block, and they get them to do a lot of the grunt work, and they say like, oh, like just keep at it, like, you know, you'll get there one of these days. But eventually they're like, oh, that guy was never going to tell me that like I eventually have to do what he's doing. Like, and then I think young people, they don't really know that you could just do the same thing that guy is doing. Although he has the authority, you could sort of like bypass that guy sometimes. And I think it just takes people, in a lot of cases, like basically that's what I'm saying, is like no one's listening. I'm gonna shut up a second. But that grocer, that kid bagging the groceries, he's never gonna, those people who are like gallivanting around and they're property owners, they're never gonna tell that kid, oh, you're never gonna get anywhere with that job. That manager guy, he's just gonna have you there for like 5 or 10 years. And meanwhile, you just gotta find a new job. It's like, yeah, it's like, I'm gonna shut up in a second. But that thing in Fight Club where he's like, that guy said, I should have been out finding a new job. I should have been out like trying to figure out how to like get mine, or like, or really like potentially take advantage of other people. That's a fucked up thing too. Nobody's listening, right? I don't want to take advantage of other people, but I learned that when I was 32, I started this business called Movie Media, and I found out like, oh, like if you can use and abuse, like the way capitalism seems to work is if you can use and abuse and basically capitalize off of a bunch of other people's labor somehow, that's how you can like get rich, either by owning property or starting a business or something, and basically just undercutting people who oftentimes are like younger people. You gotta like get out of that. You gotta like not let people like bleed you or something like that. But I'm some loser guy. Like I'm very sheltered. I'm sure like mature people, they would say no, that's not true. You should work your way up. And I started at the bottom and stuff. I don't know. That's what I see. The older I get, the more and more I see older people basically having some younger people stuck in some sort of like rat trap, and they're like, oh, just keep at it, like you'll get there. But meanwhile, they're just using them for like 5 years or 10 years, and eventually that person's like, ugh, I was just wasting money. They were just using me. I was just stuck in their little rat trap. And it's like, even the same thing could be said of me in my jiu-jitsu class right now, except I'm not paying for it. My dad's paying for it, and so I'm not really worried about it. But that's just, it's very common. It's very common that there's a lot of young people who are looking up to some 50-year-old guy who's like, I'll get you there, and that guy's just never gonna tell them like, dude, there's like way better deals. There's like 100 people on the internet who could serve you way better than me, but I'm not going to tell you about that because I'm happy to have you keep coming to me. And so, what's the point? I wish I knew that when I was like 20 something, but also I just wish I fucked my brains out. If I could talk to a 20 something year old version of myself, I would just say, just try to do that brave, like cool stuff that like you're scared to do if you can. Don't break any laws though. And if you have to take like a little bit of drugs to seem cool or get yourself to do that, that's what I would say to a younger person myself. I know you want to be like good and responsible and stuff, but dude, there's like, I don't know, there's so much time to like spend at a desk from 40 something onward. Also, what else? Nobody's listening, right? I feel like I'm being an asshole now, but I also think like nobody's listening, right? Maybe I was probably very naive when I was in my 20s. But like, I thought that I would meet some woman and some woman would love me like my parents love me. I really believed in like love and stuff like that. And then I met this woman when I was 30. I don't want to sound like a misogynist, but I met this woman when I was 30 who basically was like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And she just kind of had me like doing all this stuff, and I was old naive like a country bumpkin, and I was basically trying to make her dreams come true, and I was serving her and paying for all this stuff. And then like as soon as it became clear I wasn't, like I started to get suspicious because she was talking to other guys. As soon as like I sort of was like, hey, like I'm not gonna keep serving you, and I'm not gonna pay for this apartment anymore, and I'm not gonna let you take advantage of me, she was like off with his head. It was like, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then like, kill him. And she took me to like court, and she this is like typical 40 something stuff, and she ganked my dog, and she pawned my ring, and she wouldn't even look at me in court. And I was like, oh, like there's like people who say I love you, but they don't give a shit about you. They just want to use you also. What's the point? It's a very cynical attitude. But basically, if I was talking to a 20-year-old version of myself, I would say, don't let other people dominate you. Like don't let other people they're not your parents. They'll be happy to like eat you alive. And nobody takes unsolicited advice, but like I guess that's what I wish I knew when I was in my 20s, is those other people, they don't care about you like your parents. And you can get used a lot by somebody who's going to be really nice. They'll just be like, hey, how's it going? And they'll seem like, oh, this guy's like my parent. But they're not. They don't really care. And then there'll be this weird thing where like after like 5 years of niceness and you've paid all this money, they'll be like, sorry, buddy, like that's the way the cookie crumbles. So like, I thought you were like nice. And they're like, I just wanted your money. And I was like, oh, fuck. And so what's the point? what's the gist of what you're trying to say? Just be careful about getting used, and I think that goes for anybody, but particularly younger people, or maybe even older people. I think anybody, older people can get taken advantage of too. Careful of getting used. Just know that there's a lot of times there's like an unnecessary middleman who you're seeing on a regular basis, who's either a boss, a teacher, a landlord, a real estate guy, and meanwhile he's not going to tell you, but there's like way better deals, and you can you can just research on the internet, and you can probably find like a better job, a better spouse, a better deal, a better landlord, and all sorts of stuff. But that guy will never tell you that, and I think people suffer by just not knowing that there's better deals than that unnecessary middleman. What else? The sooner you can like own some shit, the better. And dominate. Don't get dominated. Dominate. Don't get dominated. Don't get stuck in some other person's system. They're not your parent. They don't really care. And just there can be some woman who says, I love you, 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 and then when it's clear she's not gonna get what she wants to have, she'll be like, off with his head, and you're like, what happened to all the I love yous? It's like she wanted to see what she could get, and it's fucked up. It's fucked up. It's a cynical perspective. Also, I think you should just fuck your brains out. Fuck your brains out. Take a little bit of drugs, whatever you gotta do to get that sweet succulent young pussy short of rape is fair game, and it's just the best stuff in life. I have yet to find a more pleasurable, satisfying thing than putting my dick in the pussy of somebody I was really attracted to with no condom. It's just really unparalleled in terms of sheer pleasure. It just doesn't seem like it's doable without a lot of money. After it has not been doable again without the expectation of money or time that's unreasonable after the age of 40. And so I didn't know that. Anyway, live and learn. The great Sean has spoken. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to be less of an asshole. I could be wrong. Everything I said could be wrong, but that's my perspective at 44. I would tell the 24-year-old version of myself, you have so much opportunity by being a 20-year-old. Like, that's what I would say to the 24-year-old version of myself. Youth really is the best thing to have in life. That's my opinion. Is basically like, the other things are replaceable, and again, there's going to be so much time to spend at like a desk. But I think Jordan Peterson says this too. Any like 50-year-old would trade whatever luxuries and wealth and security they have just to be like 20 something again. Because I think just being young is probably like the best. It's like the best thing you could have. Plus being able to have sex with some other like hot chick is like pretty great. Anyway, good luck in your endeavors. Who knew?